All right, guys. I want you guys to close your eyes and imagine a place where black people lived in a community where education was promoted and crime rates were very low and black families were getting married at an 80% rate. Communities thrived, black businesses flourished. This was actually a thing back in 1950. And I want this gentleman to give his account, his experience of what it was like to live in the black community during that time prior to 1960. Pay attention to what he's saying because he gives a very vivid recitation of what his experiences was living in the black community at this time. Pay attention.
I grew up in South Philadelphia. We didn't realize it was segregated. All we knew is that our neighborhood was all black, and we weren't even that conscious of color because the people who owned the store down the street were black, the tailor, the restaurant owners, the undertaker, everybody in the neighborhood, and it was a very small street. Everybody worked, blue collar, essentially. Very close-knit neighborhood. Everybody worked.
Our institutions served as an anchor for us. Our business formation rate was high then. If we were able to accomplish the building of hospitals, dental schools, hotels, movie theaters, vaudeville theaters, if we were able to accomplish this and not engage in the kind of self-destruction.
What's the proper way to murder nigga?
You go walk down on him, grab him by his hood, and one to the head.
I'm gonna hit you one time in the head, 2 times in the chest.
How can you explain that?
Had over 4 children. We played in the streets together. On Saturday morning, our parents came out and the hucksters came around and our parents purchased things. We had to go buy ice because there were no refrigerators then. We had a coal stove, so the younger kids were responsible for putting wood and coal into the stove and keeping it going. And the level of interest, I don't think I've ever had such a positive educational experience that I did in my first 6 years, because school was an integral part of the community. We had a black.
Did you hear that? School was an integral part of the community.
As blacks emerged from slavery, a minute percentage could read or write, and yet in half a century, over half the black population was literate. An economic historian has called that one of the most remarkable things in history.
Black superintendent, black principal, all the teachers were black. Many of them didn't live in the neighborhood either. Contrary to popular belief, they were middle-income people who lived elsewhere. But their hearts and their souls were into those kids. I remember that 3rd grade and 4th grade plays were always conducted in the evenings so that parents could attend. And an auditorium that seated maybe 400, 500 people was standing room only for a 3rd and 4th grade play. Up until 1959, 78% of all black families had a man and a woman in them.
Up until 1959, and upwards of 78% of black households contained a man and a woman, a mother and a father.
Back then, it was commonplace to have both parents in the home. If you made a commitment and you married somebody and you had kids, you stayed with them.
It wasn't just about your immediate family. It was also about your church family.
Did a 180 here? Let's proceed.
In fact, teen pregnancy was looked down upon. Sexual activity among kids, everyone bragged about it. No one did it.
Oh, by the way, teen pregnancy today in the black community is, I want to say 48% for young black teens. 48% teen pregnancy.
And but if someone became pregnant, if there was an aunt in the South, they would go there, so that the moral standards and ethical standards for people living in those communities was extremely high.
Because we had shame. people actually felt obligated to call other people out on their misdeeds and their shameful behavior. Something that's very much so missing in the black community today is shame. We have no shame.
It had little to do with your income. Many of us were poor without realizing that we were poor. During the war years, I thought everyone had one pair of shoes. Today, I have a lot of shoes because of those early experiences. You know, you put cardboard in your shoes when your soles were worn out. You never went to your mother and said, "Mom, my shoes need to be replaced or fixed." You just knew that the money wasn't there for that. So you got the thickest piece of cardboard you can find and put it in your shoes. And if it didn't rain, you could last for 2 days. The discipline was in the community. I mean, you didn't speak back to an adult. The thought of an elderly person being disrespected was just unheard of. And if you misbehaved, you would be spanked by a neighbor. And your mother got home or father got home, you were spanked there. And God forbid a teacher should ever have to send for your parents. And they had to take off work. That was it.
I wouldn't do that just yet. 'Cause your ass is mine.
And so it imposed a kind of discipline. And again, it was a discipline that had little to do with how much money you made. There was a sense of comfort, a sense of well-being, a sense of oneness between the school and the community. The early days,
they functioned as a collective whole. They didn't think the same because they all had their own separate nuclear families. Families are the building blocks of a community.
Civil rights was not an issue. The black colleges gave kids like me, a high school dropout, who dropped out with 3 months after my 17th birthday, and then went into the military and got introduced to learning there, got on flying status, went to a really nice military school, learned airborne electronics, did some flying with the military, and then finished my high school education there, and was told that I could enter any college in the country because of my scores, but I lacked the kind of confidence. But the black colleges, my college, Cheney State College, I think reached out to me. It was a warm environment. It was almost a continuation of the kind of warm and accepting environment I experienced in the black schools in my native Philadelphia and my old neighborhood. Cheney was a continuation of that kind of loving experience, but it was tough. I remember.
Can you believe this guy is actually describing the black community? I mean, I can't even conceive of that being a thing today. I mean, when you think about the hood today,
you can take the shiki out the hood. You can't take the hood niggas out the shiki.
People represent the hood. Yeah, I'm from the block, blah, 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 blah. You don't think about sort of this euphoric, utopian, vivacious community. You don't see that in your mind. What you're thinking about is, gang, hitting licks, do this, do that, gotta come up. All that dumb stuff, perpetuating a cycle of destruction.
I entered with 13 other veterans, and we were given some priority in admissions because it was thought that we were mature. Our grades weren't that great, and so we were placed on academic probation, but over half of us made the dean's list at the end of the first year from academic probation. Many of us who exercised leadership in the civil rights movement in the early and mid-'60s, integration was never our goal. We never saw integration as a solution to the problems. We were seeking desegregation.
Okay, hold up. I don't know if you guys heard what he said, but they were not seeking integration. They were actually seeking desegregation. They wanted to stay within their own communities. They wasn't begging for preferential treatment. They weren't doing that.
Since we have integrated, we have become too comfortable since we have integrated, we have become too comfortable that we're going to make it anyhow. And I think that parents have allowed the children to get away with too much as far as education is concerned, not being as strict as they would have been if the schools had remained black, because of the fact that you would have black teachers, and those black teachers would be as strict, I feel, on a black child. You know,
the whole entire affirmative action ordeal came about because Lyndon B. Johnson wanted to capitulate to black America that on behalf of his administration, we apologize.
Kiss it. Huh? Apologize. Kiss it. You want me to kiss your... That's right, apologize. Okay, I'll, let's see here. Apologize.
There wasn't a march upon Capitol Hill begging to be a part of white America via affirmative action.
You see, for example, a few years ago in the affirmative action case, the Michigan case, that was decided, there were 100 briefs were submitted to the Supreme Court in favor of racial preferences by every imaginable American institution, from corporations to city governments, even the military submitted a brief. You notice there was no march on Washington in favor of affirmative action by blacks, by black people or other minorities, nothing. But this extraordinary pressure from America's institutions arguing that the Supreme Court ought to allow racial preferences to stay in place.
Continue to erode the collective self-confidence of the black community today. Just a very confusion. You see, I fought against de jure segregation. That is, when someone absolutely forbid me to go into a restaurant or live in a given housing complex, I was just restricted by law. I remember when I was discharged from the military.
That was racist in nature. Once upon a time, we can point objectively and say that policy is a bit racist, or this institution is slightly racist. Now, we just use the word as a buzzword. It's an arbitrary play of words. It's actually a semantic overload. That's all right. That whole term, that buzzword, racism, all that is. It's just something to get you all emotionally aroused, that you're easily manipulated and controlled once they got you entranced by that word.
Racism.
Coming home in 1958 and standing in Florida, only person at a ticket window, and have the man stop and wait on a white person. He waited on 10 white people while I was standing there. In the meantime, I almost missed a train and couldn't check my bags. That's what I fought against, the indignity of America's apartheid system. So integration was never an issue for me or for many others.
Are you an idealist?
Oh, absolutely. A flaming idealist who had this burning desire to change things, primarily because of my early experience as someone growing up in the South and then being sort of growing up in the North and then dropped in the South in the military, facing raw segregation. I was very bitter from that experience. For 3 years after my discharge in the military, I remember my heart racing every time a red light would flash in my rearview mirror, because I was arrested 3 times and imprisoned in local jails 3 times because of my activism in the South. And so those early memories really motivated me to do something about it.
So, in essence, guys, I mean, I know some of you are thinking, okay, this might be just this anecdotal experience. You know, not everybody felt this way. You know, I hate to tell you guys this, but the facts, the verifiable evidence and data and statistics support this guy's anecdotal experience. Black communities were once upon a time thriving. Not only thriving, but prospering. It wasn't until the 60s But that's another video. We can get to that. But I just wanted to give you guys one man's personal account. He actually lived during this period of what it was like. Now contrast that to what it is today. Black superintendents, black professionals, black teachers, black academics, black communities were at the pinnacle of their economic success. If you guys disagree, leave a comment, like, comment, subscribe. You know the whole jazz. Till next time, unwoke yourself.